Hello, how are you guys today? Doing great, thank you. I am so honored to be part of this special day. The Best Global Brands is a fantastic piece of work, and I've worked very closely with our Chief Trademark Officer to use that to sell the idea of how important brands are within our Wrigley organization. So I'm just so pleased to be part of this special day. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've spent my entire career in candy, which is pretty cool. My kids think that that's fantastic. I started right out of undergrad in Wrigley in Consumer Insights. Spent about 7 years doing various roles in brand. And in 2008, I stepped out of the US business to take a global role leading design and artwork. And that's where my relationship with Interbrand started, about 2008. And we took a team, it was a packaging graphics team, and we took it from a very transactional element of the marketing mix, and we elevated that to the a strategic part of how people think about packaging and branding in the organization. And today, that part of my team they're the brand identity stewards within the organization. So it's been an amazing transformation. And through that experience, I really have found where my passions lie. I'm a change agent, so I get out of bed every day to make things a little better. And I get thrills from creating things that didn't exist before, forging new partnerships to create something new, and driving a continuous mindset improvement, not only within my team, but within the broader organization. And this is my home team here, my 2 girls and my husband, and they're back in Chicago cheering me on today. So with that, I'm gonna move forward. So what I'd like to take you through today is the 5 observations that I've been able to make over a 17-year journey within one organization. And the blessing of being there for 17 years is I've had the continuity to see behavior patterns repeated over and over and over again that I think ladder up to a growth mindset. So let me just read them through you, and then we'll unpack each of them, okay? So okay, didn't like that. The first one is don't accept the status quo. You absolutely cannot accept the status quo. The second one is that you need to shed your skin to grow. The third one is that you really need to lean into your partnerships and actively work them. The fourth one is to lift your head above water so that you can plan and build the future. And the fifth one is having the courage to make tough decisions. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. First, I'm going to start with some context setting. So you have to understand the type of organization that I've grown up in. I've grown up in corporate. I've grown up in now that a company, in the size of a company that's now $30 billion as we became part of Mars. So very different than the story that you heard before, right? It's a matrixed organization. There's global, regional, local levels. There's people moving in and out of roles at an amazing pace. And the speed that we are working to get initiatives into the marketplace is on a 12 to 18-month horizon. So it's fast, fast, fast. What that results in is a loss of the knowledge trail. So while a week or a day can feel like it was eternity, 2 and 3 years can pass in the blink of an eye. And because of how fast things are moving inside the company, you lose that knowledge trail of why decisions were made, why things are the way they are. And what happens then as a result is you can kind of be dissatisfied with the situation. And whether that situation is my brand's not growing, it's been declining year over year over year, or this process is broken, why doesn't this work? Or this supplier relationship I have, it's just not optimal and I don't understand why. You cannot accept the status quo when you're working in a huge organization. But many times we'll have new associates come in and they just don't know how to fix it. And so what you need to do, design thinking, is peel back the onion and ask why, and really be a student of the problem. Once you have an intimate understanding of what is causing the issues, then you can really make impactful decisions on how to create change and how to drive something transformational forward. If you accept a surfacey solution, a quick win, a little patch or a Band-Aid, you're not going to move yourself forward. And in fact, you're probably going to distract yourself further from finally tackling in and facing into what that difficult problem was. And so that leads to number 2. You have to shed your skin to grow. So once you can really powerfully diagnose what a problem was and whether, again, that's my business is not growing or my supplier relationship isn't working, you can pinpoint what are those artifacts of 2 and 5 and 7 years ago that might be causing this. What are those old decisions or old stories that are looming in this big organization that are holding us back from moving forward in a different direction? And you can precisely identify them and make some powerful recommendations so that you can reimagine your business, you can redirect the business, you can create new and impactful ways of working and processes. I like to say, and my team will chuckle at this, sorry. You've got to constantly be scraping the barnacles off the ship. So as soon, it's my favorite thing to say, because as soon as you scrape those barnacles off, new ones are going to start forming. So once you land that problem, you have to continuously monitor and fix it and direct it, because the moss is going to start growing under your toes somewhere else, especially in a big organization. So my third one is around your partners, right? The grass is not always greener on the other side. And when things are not going well in a business, it's really easy to say, let's fire the agency, let's scrap that campaign, let's just do something really disruptive and different. My guess is that probably 50 to 70% of the time, that is not the right solution. And what you need to do is think about your partners as part of your team. And whether that's your agencies, whether that's your cross-functional partners, whether that's the people within your business unit or in your immediate team, you can kind of act at the vendor level, supplier level, or partner level. And to me, I don't have energy or time to work at the vendor level. It's very transactional. You're not going to get anything transformational or breakthrough. It's when you actually turn your attention and think about people as partners is when you're going to get breakthrough and transformational results. And that means acting differently. So that means really transparent conversations. That means letting your walls down and letting your partners know what's going on, what your vision is, where your ambitions are, and treating them in a mutual fashion, right? And when you do that, they're going to work harder for you. They want you to be just as successful as they are. They're going to give that extra mile, and they're going to grow and change with you. And that's no different than the partners or the relationships you have in your personal life. Think about those of you who are married or are in a relationship. They take work. They take investment in time. They take honesty. It's not always easy, and it's not always comfortable, and the conversations aren't always pretty. But as long as both of you are in it to come out better on the other end, those partnerships are going to be much more powerful than you could have ever imagined. And you have to look at yourself as a company and think about the fact that you're not going to be great at everything. So you need to surround yourself with companies that are great and lock arms with them and use them as an extension of you to really drive growth in your category. The next idea is about lifting your head above water so that you can plan for the future. And so for any of you who work in a day-to-day business unit where you have, monthly, quarterly, annual targets, you have shareholders that are, giving expectations to you, more times than not, you're going to put your focus on the things that are important today to 18 months out. And it's really hard to step back and carve out resources and people and budget to go off and work on planning and architecting and building what the future is going to look like. And if you think about the pace of change in today's marketplace, whether that's retail change, digital media, the companies need to make those investments in infrastructure, in new capabilities that they've never had before. And if you're only paving the road while you're driving on the road, you may end up hitting a brick wall because you didn't pick your head up and look at where you're going. So that's really critically important, and I know it's really hard to convince people to make those investments, but that's where the power of transformation and growth will happen. And finally, having the courage to make those hard decisions. This one's really important. You know, transformational decisions and transformational change is not easy, and I'll never tell you that it is. It's messy, it's complicated, it's ambiguous, it can be emotional, it can have people impacts, but when you make big, hard decisions, that's what's going to open you up and free you up to grow. And what I've observed over and over and over again is that businesses will wait until you're in double-digit, multi-year decline to decide that, oh, maybe, you know what, maybe we need to make some changes. And that's the worst time to do it because people are so distracted and just trying to figure out what the problem is that they're not able to also look forward and think about breakthrough, inspiring solutions for the future. I was actually part of a town hall earlier this year where one of the leaders got up and they were announcing some pretty difficult decisions. And he said, you know, we're actually in a period of growth right now, and it's very rare to make, you know, these kinds of organizational structure decisions, but what we're trying to do is build or protect, future-proof our business for a decade of growth. And so we're going to make these decisions today so that we have the financial model that'll free us up for growth in the future. And I found that so refreshing and inspiring that the business was actually thinking for the future. And so I'm going to wrap it up with some cultural underpinnings that I've observed. And so when you have a brand team or a business unit or a global brand board that's working at its best, these are a few things that I've seen. The first one is that there's a safe environment for people to speak up and give constructive and candid feedback. And when you're in a business experience where people are afraid to point out the obvious, to point out what's not working, that doesn't free you up to grow. That creates toxic behavior, unproductive work, et cetera. So really, as a leader in whatever you're doing, creating a safe environment for people to speak freely and you speak on their behalf is critically important. The second thing that I've observed in these types of teams is that they have the courage and the tenacity to fight for what they believe in. Because in a big organization, a lot of times these teams are fighting artifacts, old stories, you know, a tide or a current that's going the other way and they're swimming upstream. And so they have to really have the courage to stand up for what they believe in, repeat themselves over and over and over and over again, and then over again some more, and really stick together to make a difference. And then the final one is those teams. The culture that I've seen is that there's unbelievable alignment. So there's a trust, almost a blind trust that they have in each other. And when they agree on what the plan is, they set out to get it done. And they can divide and conquer and trust that what I've given you to do and what I've given you to do, you're going to go do it with excellence. And when we come back together, you know, we'll be more stronger as a team and we'll have delivered something faster and better than most people could have ever imagined. So that's all I have for today. It was amazing to be part of this. Should we hand off?
Sure, unless anybody has any questions. Kara's open for questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll start with one. Kara,
Okay.
What's in your time at Wrigley, what's been the biggest surprise or change that you sort of didn't expect to see coming? Has there been some big surprise in the years that's come up that you've noticed?
Well, two. So, you know, the first one I would say is when Mars acquired Wrigley and we went from a publicly traded company to a privately held company. And I will tell you that's probably one of the biggest gifts that we ever received, to go to a family-run business who truly cares about its people, its community, and the long-term longevity of the company. And then the second one would have been an announcement a few weeks ago that we are combining with the chocolate segment to create one of the world's biggest confectionery companies. So that's an exciting journey we're about to embark on.
Excellent. Constant is change, right?
Yes.
Did I see another question out here?
Yeah.
So following up on that,
Yeah.
the C-suite, making them realize change versus the company, which is harder to change, the entire company or the C-suite?
Interesting question. I I think if you can have a compelling story to the C-suite, they can actually help you accelerate change. And I'll give you a great example. I mean, when we've tried to change the entire company and how they think about brands and why they're important, Jez set it up perfectly today. It's not just about the design department or the marketing department that has to embrace a brand, it's everybody. And I think the Chobani presentation really brought to life that the brand experience is in every single thing that you do. And that is not a grassroots effort that one department can do, but when you can get a CMO and a president buying into that and pushing that down through the organization, you're going to accelerate change and mindset shift much faster.
Any other questions for Kara?
Hi, Kara.
Hi.
What advice do you have for teams to get strong alignment you were talking about, where that blind trust in each other? I think that's so important for all of us to understand how you've been able to do that.
Okay. I think a lot of times it starts with the leader of the team. And I've been on a brand board, and I'm not going to name which one, that struggled leader after leader after leader, and the brand kept declining and declining and declining. And it wasn't until the right kind of leader was selected and he was able to accelerate the cohesion of the team, the feeling of trust and empowerment, to completely turn that internal culture. And growth really does start with the internal team, because if it's not just about people buying stuff at Walmart, it's that team internally believing strongly in the brand and being able to work differently to overcome all of those barriers. So I would say it starts with the leader.
Other questions for Kara? Okay.
I made it easy on you.
You did, thank you.
I was going to ask if you could give a good example of maybe one of the biggest successes or things that you were most proud of watching come that you've launched, but I don't want to do that. I actually would rather, I'm going to ask the opposite end of that and say, can you give a good example of maybe one of those failures where you had that awesome slide of the house burning down? But before a challenge that you faced where it was more of a failure, but it launched something greater. So said another way, the way you described not waiting till something was a disaster, but you changed and you were all the better for it. Do you have a great example of something that you could say, no, this was a great time that we can draw to say, look what we did by taking that risk?
Yeah. Any inspiration over here?
Oh, team, come on.
Well, I'll give an example. It's still a work in process. So one of our biggest global brands is actually 2 to 4 nameplates. It's Orbit and Extra. All the Americans would know it as Orbit. Elsewhere in the world, it's Extra. And we've been on a journey to harmonize that brand, because it was really a bunch of disparate businesses kind of under an oral care position. And so I think we took a lot of steps forward to teach the organization that you can share and reapply. I think we were able to make a step forward in harmonizing the identity. I don't think we've landed the ship yet. But I think within that, we also did a lot of things wrong. Like the campaign, while we were able to celebrate search and reapply behavior, the campaign didn't work, and we hung on to it too long instead of admitting and facing into the fact that outside of 2 countries, it wasn't a powerful idea. And so we could have gone faster if people felt safe to speak up sooner.
Any other questions for Kara? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.